really accessible, pretty easy to learn comparatively. They tend to be much shorter games overall, and in general, they kind of appeal to my sensibilities a lot more. I grew up in the era of the end of the NES and the beginning of the SNES, so those were my formative years, and definitely the video games that shaped my childhood. So for me, I've got a backlog of probably 100 more games that it's just like, these are the games that I played as a kid and just want to keep playing. So
at that, I don't want to make, speedrunning is not streaming. I know that. I want to make sure that to get that out there. Speedrunning is not streaming. But when you how was your kind of viewership at that point when you kind of were doing Super Mario World, then jump to various games? Because I know, it's a big issue. People that care about the viewers, if they play one game and then they switch to another game, they kind of become known for one game. They switch to another game, they switch to varied games. Viewership just plummets usually for some people. So what was it like for you?
Well, I will say that I never got good at Super Mario World until I came back to it a few years later. So during the period of time where I was just doing Super Mario World and I was transitioning over to playing some other games, my viewership was already really low. It was less than 10 viewers per stream. So for me, changing over from having, 10 people there for Super Mario World to 3 people there to watch me, it really didn't affect me all that much. I was never particularly all that concerned with streaming. I still don't consider myself all that concerned, but I was never all that concerned with my viewer numbers. I've always been a big proponent of stream the games you're enjoying, and if you're having fun, people will want to watch you. And so when I switched over, I already didn't have a big following or anything like that, so it didn't affect me all that much. It's actually beneficial for me because of the fact that I did that so early before I achieved any sort of popularity. I'm still a pretty middling streamer, but before I achieved any popularity, now I have this reputation for changing games so often that the people who are watching me are kind of expecting me to play a new game every single week. I have people tell me all the time how much they enjoy the fact that they can watch my stream and see so many games they've never even heard of.
Yeah. I think it's for sure. That's definitely what you're known for. I think there's kind of two routes, right? Like you become known for being awesome at one game, or you play a varied game. But then, wouldn't you agree? It really comes down to you being entertaining and your personality, right? To get any kind of viewership or following, right?
Yeah, I think the streamers who find themselves at the highest point in the speedrunning community are the people who are both of those things. They're the people who are very successful at their game, or very accomplished at their game, or well known in their respective games community, and they happen to produce engaging, entertaining content. And I think that the people who sort of find themselves toward the middle, people who don't hit that sort of highest level, are lacking in one or the other. And I think that that's perfectly fine to be lacking in one or the other. I know plenty of amazing speedrunners who don't use webcam or mic, and so, maybe it's a little bit harder to engage with them on a personal level. Or I know plenty of people who are super entertaining people and just aren't particularly great at their game, but they're fun enough to watch that who cares?
Yeah. I would say I was surprised when I looked at your GDQ kind of history, and you only have 2 runs, actually. I know you did some commentating stuff like that. It seems like you have a lot more, and I think that kind of, it seems like you should have a lot more, I guess, in my memory. It seems like I've seen you a lot on there. I think it comes down to you having kind of a real voice in the community. Would you agree with that? I'm not saying that everyone agrees with you, but I'm saying you do have a voice and people do care about what you say, I think.
I absolutely do not think that everyone agrees with me.
Yeah.
But, I have found myself in a position where I think that I have people's ears, whether or not I necessarily want that. I mean, ultimately, I consider my Twitter and Twitch activities to be mostly, I'm entertaining myself at the end of the day. So when I tweet random things on the internet, it's really for my own amusement, and it just so happens that every now and then I strike a nerve and people tend to, or seem to, agree with the weird things that I say.
Yeah, agree and disagree. It's always entertaining for sure. But so this upcoming GDQ, you have a game on there, Titanic. I want to pronounce it correctly. Yep. So I saw some stuff on when the list first came out, and on Reddit people were talking, of course. Oh, don't worry, guys, Titanic got on there, and they're kind of talking down to the kind of, what's the right word? The place in the GDQs that a game like Titanic has.
Oh yeah, we have our own block, the Bad Games block. It's a staple of the AGDQ process. SGDQ used to have its own little block that was similar, but AGDQ has its own Bad Games block, and those of us who participate in it definitely hear all sorts of comments over game lists coming out.
Yeah. So I wanted to, because you have a real you're known for this, and playing these kind of games that no one else knows, and Titanic is one of those games for sure. So what do you say to those people that say those kind of games aren't as important as, let's say, Mario 64, all the Zeldas? What do you say to that?
Well, I think, so unpopular opinion, I think I agree to a certain extent. I think that they're not as important. I think that Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time and Super Mario Sunshine and these sorts of games, they stand up as pillars in the community. They represent the collective efforts of hundreds of people over thousands and thousands of hours, putting together their time and their efforts and their passions to make these games as polished as possible. And if anyone in the bad games community, or really most any other community, think that they're putting in a comparable effort to their games, and they're deluded. But I think that they represent a portion of or sort of a cross-section of the speedrunning community that can show that a game can be entertaining for different reasons. Super Mario 64, what is the appeal of Super Mario 64? Well, I mean, it's fantastic movement, it's polished gameplay from some of the top runners that our community has to offer. Ocarina of Time is the collective effort of thousands of hours of routing to figure out how to play that game at the highest level possible. And, those are all really interesting ways to approach speedrunning. And I think that the bad games community is about, hey, look, there's this game that you don't want to play. It's terrible. But look, if you devote some time to it, you can make this game look kind of interesting. You can make it look fun, and we have a great time. It's a block that usually, I would say, the GDQ is gracious enough to give us probably 6 to 8 hours or so. Usually a little less than that, but sometimes as much as that to show off like a bunch of really terrible games, but we just have a bunch of fun. We're sitting on the couch, we're cutting up, we're laughing, we're having a great time. And it just goes to show that, there's an aspect to this community where everything doesn't have to be as serious.
I think what I like, what drew me to watching your streams is that you, even though you're playing this game that, I don't know, it's crazy, insert crazy game name here, you do take it really seriously, right? And you really do try to break this game down and try to get the best time you can.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that I think a lot of people don't understand that line between, I don't think that the game is serious, but I take what I do with it seriously. I think that a lot of these games are terrible and frustrating, and I would not wish them on anyone, honestly, but there's something really entertaining to me. There's something really fun to me to take a game that very clearly was designed in such a way that either by a lack of effort or by just sheer malice of intent, the game is just not playable. And taking a game like that and turning it into something that's not just playable, but it's fast and it's interesting. I think that's what really draws me to speedrunning. I think the whole reason why I jumped away from Super Mario World and started trying other games in the first place was because Super Mario World, I mean, it's not the case anymore. We have found a lot of discoveries in Super Mario World that has made that game even better than it ever was. But at the time, from the level I was at, it just felt like it was already a solved game. It felt like there was really nothing that I could bring to the table aside from just learning it myself. And I really wanted to try to do that with other games. I wanted to bring that level of polish and effort into these games that really no one had tried before. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do with games now. I pick up a game that no one has played, or someone is, maybe there's just a task, and I say, all right, what from this task can I take and actually make, real time viable? And that's I feel like that's kind of been my place in the community over the past 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and I think that's true for sure. And like, what do you think? Like, GDQs are, obviously people want to have the games go fast. They want to have high level runners do the game. But what do you think? Because your kind of game, when you play Titanic or something, you don't have much competition, right? So you are the best player. But do you think GDQ should concentrate on other games? Let's say the bigger games. Is getting the fastest person there most important, or is getting the most entertaining person there most important? If you were making the selections.
So that's a really tough question. I feel like there's this implicit expectation that the answer is different for different types of games. So like for Super Mario 64, I guess there's an implication that the right answer is always that the person who plays the game at the GDQ should be the person who's fastest. But I think that there's a lot of factors that go into the actual game selection and what the game selection should be. That is to say that I think that the games committee probably does use a lot more than just the fastest PB sometimes. I think that there's first the aspect of, just are they an entertaining runner to watch? There's plenty of runners out there who just aren't very interesting, and you put them on screen for 4 hours and it's, no matter how interesting the game is, it's probably going to mostly fall flat. But then there's also the aspect of what are you actually interested in? Are you interested in who has the fastest time? Are you interested in who has the most consistent times? Can someone produce a run at the level of the estimate that they're giving consistently, or could they only do it, 1 in a million times?
That's something to think about. If like, because people say, people always complain about the schedule and the games chosen. There's a lot to think about that I think not everyone thinks about, for sure. Not everyone takes into account when they criticize the selections, for sure. Okay, so I'm going to get back to the little Twitter thing here. All Right Goose, former guest, talked about Shaden's Mario Odyssey run. And Shaden said, I don't care about beating leaderboards. I don't care about getting world records, stuff like that. And All Right Goose said, this kind of thinking is extremely disrespectful to both history and fellow competitors. It cheapens the accomplishment of a new record. Take some pride in your work and have more respect. Now, you responded on Twitter, but I want to get your opinion on this now, just for people that might not catch that. What do you think about that statement by All Right Goose?